Hey friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show, and today it's about the Credo EV900 reference speaker. You know, it looks very plain, but the sound was anything but. So I talked to the designer, Michael Kresge, and over the phone, and he's in Switzerland. That's where Credo is based. And Michael and I definitely hit it off. And he told me some really cool things. First of all, here's this picture I'm going to show you of him as a toddler. His father is working on a JBL speaker. And he said he took his first steps like walking on that JBL speaker. That's pretty good. Good start for a guy who's going to grow up to be a speaker designer. He actually made his first speaker from a kit when he was 7 years old. He designed his first complete speaker when he was 14. You know, he was at his father's side. His father is a speaker designer. His father founded Credo. And he grew up in that world. But he took a little turn because he also worked as a mix engineer and a mastering engineer. He spent a lot of time actually away from the speaker business doing recording things and sound things, and then came back to speaker design later. So we were off to a good start. So when I started listening to this speaker, the thing that jumped out right away was the imaging. I mean, again, the speaker doesn't look like anything technological special is happening, and I'm not claiming there is, actually, but the imaging was different. The imaging was extremely coherent. It had great depth, great focus, and just it made more sense. You know that thing when imaging just seems more real, more complete in its depth and its space, even height. It just seemed right. It's like, yeah, definitely. Coherency was a part of it. And then when I was talking to Michael, he explained that the crossover is unusual in a couple of ways. First of all, it's not as simple. It basically is a first order 6 dB per octave crossover. He said, but then there's a steeper crossover and another slope in there. It was way too technical for me, but the crossover is anything but ordinary. And maybe that's it. And he does claim that the speaker is a time coherent design. Now the drivers, the 1-inch soft dome tweeter and the 5¼ inch woofer are made by ScanSpeak, but to Credo's specification. So it's not an off-the-shelf driver, but they don't claim to make it in-house. Everything else about the speakers is made in Switzerland. The cabinets, by the way, are HDF, not medium density fiberboard, but high density fiberboard. They feel very solid, but interestingly, the cabinets are solid. But Michael has a thing about not using tiptoes or spikes or anything on his speakers. He doesn't want a rigid connection to the floor. Actually, they're kind of jiggly. They sit on this beautifully machined aluminum, I think it's aluminum, base, but underneath the base aren't spikes, but these basically donut-shaped squishy things. So the speaker is just jiggling around there. But the purpose of that is to decouple the speaker from the floor. So the speaker is not putting energy into the floor. Round back, well, at first you think it's just kind of standard bi-wire connectors, but not exactly. And I'm going to show you a diagram of basically the 4 ways you can hook up wires to this speaker. But one connection scheme has a plus 2 dB rise for the tweeter. And I asked Michael about that, and he said, well, you know, some rooms are over damped, or if you're using them with soft sounding electronics, you might want to add the plus 2. I felt no compulsion to do that, so I listened to it straight without the plus 2. The bass port on the rear, well, I play music with a lot of bass sometimes, and I put my hands on the ports to feel how much air was moving through them, and very little air is happening back there. You don't feel a lot of huffing and puffing coming out of that port. So in that sense, I guess you could put them near a wall, but as I always caution, great sound does not usually happen when speakers are jammed up near walls. So mine were well out into the room, as most of my speakers that I listen to are. It's like 4 feet, 4.5 feet away from the wall behind them. If you can get away with it, more space between the speaker and the wall is usually better. Not always, but that's why I always urge people to experiment. Did forget to mention the crossover, by the way, is relatively high. It's 2.8K. In a two-way speaker, most two-ways are crossed over at 1800, 2000. This one at 2.8K. I also forgot to mention the impedance, which is 4 ohms, and I think it dips down a little bit to as minimum of 3.7. So yes, you should use this speaker with amplifiers that like low impedance speakers. The price, oh yes, the price is not free, as my friend Herb would say. It is $12,000 a pair, starting at $12,000 a pair, depending on the finished configuration. My samples were in, I think they call it rough cut, so it had kind of a raised grain thing going on there. It was really beautiful, really stunning finish. So those are the nuts and bolts part of this review. Let's get to the music, man. It is all about the music. So, well, I listened to a lot of music. This was one of those reviews that kind of stretched out because I was really having a good time. So anyway, this recording, Jimmy, you might guess this is the music of Jimi Hendrix, and you would be correct. But this guy here, Christy Doran, is a guitar player. And it's a live recording from 2004. Christy is definitely influenced heavily by Jimi Hendrix. He's playing homage to Hendrix in this recording, but he takes it to a different place. And that's what I think is so appealing about this recording, is that it's faithful, it's respectful to the music of Jimi Hendrix, but he's pushing it further. It's jazzier, it's looser. He's clearly having a great time. You don't sense the audience, though it is a live recording, but it's one of those recordings that I think is a total thrill. It's a joyride for Jimi Hendrix fans. Jimi Hendrix fans that are cool with a little jazzy influences here and there. Let's put it that way. But anyway, you can hear it on Tidal and Qobuz or whatever. 3 percussionists. 3. Count them 3 on this recording. Lenny White, you might remember him from Return to Forever. Mark Sherman and Jamie Haddad. This whole recording session was an improvisation. They just went in there and made stuff up. And the dynamics are 100% uncompressed. There's no processing at all each here. So it's a stereo microphone setup, but in a binaural head. And it was that session was just one of those, whoa, yikes. So I showed these speakers no mercy. I played them really, I wouldn't say realistically loud, but plenty loud, and they could take it. It's a 5.25-inch woofer, and yet the impact of those big drums was really, really amazing. The air, the space of the church that it was recorded in, it was recorded in Brooklyn, not far from where I live, and the EV900 was bringing it back alive. Definitely a thrill. Then I brought out this record. Now, Freak Out is from 1966. 1966 is actually a little early for the psychedelic age. It's not really. Psychedelic is more like a year later, 67. Things changed quickly in the 60s. So 66 is pre-psychedelic, but this record is seriously psychedelic. I mean, it's so weird. It was weird then, but here we are 54 years later. It's still really weird, and the sound and the mix is just kind of an ear-opening experience. And you know, it was on vinyl. I was playing on my SME-15 with an SME-5 arm and an Ortofon Cadenza Blue cartridge. Lights were down, and Zappa just took over my listening room. I love my job. Which I want to say, by the way, I love my job because here on my YouTube channel, I get to do whatever the hell I want. I enjoyed my 18-year stint at CNET. It was fantastic. And I did a lot of what I wanted. But here, I just do whatever. And it's so gratifying to hear from you guys out there that a lot of you apparently like it, and that's so cool. So thanks again. Anyway, back to the review. So these speakers, though they look ordinary, except for the finish, which is anything but they're pretty demure as high-end speakers go. And yet the sound was very, very satisfying. Now I will say that a speaker with a 5¼ woofer does not have the weight and impact and scale that my Klipsch Cornwall 4s do. The Cornwall 4s are half the price of this guy. So there's a contrast there, right? That the EV900 is a skinny speaker, works in a normal room. The Cornwall 4 is a big honking speaker, and it takes up a lot of your space when it's there, and it lets you know about it. And sonically, it definitely has a scale advantage. It has a 15-inch woofer, and trust me, 15-inch woofers have it all over 5¼ woofers when it comes to impact, power, deep bass response, obviously, right? So it always comes down to, for anybody considering, speaker shopping, what are your priorities? What do you prize most? So the Klipsch at half the price is more dynamic. It's more of a wham bam speaker, but yet the Cornwall 4 sounds so good at late night hushed levels, which surprisingly so that was not true of the EV900 reference. It needed to be played sort of medium-ish loud to really come alive. So it's interesting, those contrasts between what speakers do and what they do well. It's why there are so many different kinds of speakers. Gang, if there was only one way to do it, then we'd only have one kind of speaker. Top end, the tweeter is really good. It's one of those, it doesn't call attention to itself tweeters. It's clean, it's clear, but it's not as sparkly, it's not bright, it's not trying to say, hey, look at all this detail. That's good, I like that. But in a way, it was a little too reticent, maybe that's the word I'm searching for. Not the ultimate in transparency, and certainly not as live sounding as the horn tweeter in the Cornwall. But again, I feel it's a little awkward comparing it to the Cornwall because the Cornwall is so much bigger, so it's not an either or for most people. Okay, but then I played Stevie Wonder's Talking Book album. You know what? His voice over the EV900 was so there, so correct, so not correct, so human, so yeah, Stevie was in the room. Really, really, really extraordinary how it just all came together. It's a great recording. No, I'm sorry, it's not really a great recording, but for some reason, his vocal just literally, it spoke to me. Talking book, you get it? So with the right recording, this speaker can really just show off that mid-range like few can. Yeah, you know what? It's an expensive speaker. It's no doubt about it. But you know what? It sounds like one. The Credo EV900 reference. Yeah. For the right kind of audiophile, with the right room and the right partnering electronics, it's the one. It's definitely worthy of your consideration. My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. If you dig it, hit that button. Subscribe. I urge you strongly. What else? Check me out on Twitter at AudiophiliacMan, on Instagram at steve.guttenberg. What else? Patreon. Look at the Patreon. You're missing out. If you haven't looked at my Patreon, please do. At patreon.com/audiophiliac. There's also playlists for more speaker reviews, for headphone reviews, for electronics reviews, and music reviews. Lots and lots of good stuff here. Interviews with all kinds of cool people, blah, 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 blah. You got it. I think my work here is at last complete. My name's Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. Thank you so much for watching, and I really, really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very, very